Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the Ski Instructor podcast. My name's Dave Burrows and I'm the director and owner of SnowPro Ski School based here in Val d'Illier in Switzerland. I hope you're all well. This is attempt number 6, an introduction here. I've had helicopters going past. There's a couple of fellas in the back of the office here who are replacing doors and windows or something. A scooter went past and I've lost my way 3 or 4 times. So let's hope I can get this one right because it's taking ages at this point right now. I hope you're all well. We've got snow on the mountains here in Val d'Illier opposite me. I can't see it out of the window here on this side, but on the other side, on the Dent du Midi, on the kind of the teeth of the Dent du Midi, from about 2,000 up to 3,300 meters, there is snow, which is great. We've got like a bunch of wet weather going through this week, and obviously at altitude it's snowing, which is great because I'm hopefully going to finally be able to get on my skis in the next week or two and go start making some turns. I think they should be getting some snow up at Glacier 3000 now, so I'm very much looking forward to getting the boots on and getting going much later than I expected, but we've had a lot to do. So yeah, it's been a busy autumn, and this new snow on the mountain and sort of the end of the half-term school holidays has meant that people are starting to look forward to their sort of winter bookings. We've booked in a bunch of stuff into the diary already, but now we're starting to get the sort of the tourist skiers booking their stuff in as well, which is pretty cool, but a little bit later I think than normal. And speaking to other people in the industry, that seems to be the pattern for this year, is that people are booking later. Maybe something to do with the kind of the wet weather that we had over Christmas, New Year last year. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on the profile of the bookings as they come in. This week, and this could be the episode that takes the Ski Instructor podcast past 100,000 downloads, which is mind-blowing really to me that there's been that many people download and listen to me ranting about this, that and the other, along with obviously my guests. But this week it's almost like I've done some actual real journalism. So those of you in Canada and all across the internet, I guess, will have seen the new instructor organisation that has come out of Canada, the Professional Ski Instructors of Canada, and I decided to get in touch with the guys and get their perspective on what it is that they're trying to do and what it is that they're trying to set up. So I spoke to Perry and Jeff, and we had a lovely long conversation about what it was they're trying to do and what the goal of the organisation is. So I'm just going to let this, it's quite a long episode, but I'm just going to let it run straight through because I think that's actually a better format than me inserting myself into the middle. So I probably just won't say that again. But we kind of get to know the guys a little bit. We hear their thoughts on Interski. We introduce the PSIC and what makes it different from other ski instructor organizations. I think the most interesting thing that they talk about in this episode is the link with industry. So they're kind of got a foot in both camps. So they're looking at ski resorts as well as the instructor themselves, and kind of what the ski resorts are looking for, as well as training and certifying ski instructors. So that's for me like the biggest thing, and we talk about that in depth and potential conflicts and stuff of that. We also talk about attracting people into snow sports and further stuff about PSIC philosophy and the organisation and what it is they're looking to do. Like I said, really great interview. I fully intend to follow up with these guys after their first winter. So maybe we'll hear them again after the winter. But I think that's probably enough talking from me now, and I'll just let this interview stand for itself, and you guys can learn a little bit more about the PSIC. So enjoy this, and I will catch you on episode 59. This is 58. See you soon. Hi, welcome to the Ski Instructor podcast. Perry and Jeff, Professional Ski Instructors Canada. Have I got the name right? of Canada.
You do. Good morning, Dave.
Good. How are you guys? You doing well?
Excellent. Yeah, really well. It's well, we were talking just earlier. It's an early start to the day here. It's still dark outside, which means winter's coming. It's good.
And same, Dave. It's exciting. Here in Western Canada, the hills are starting to get some snow up high, so it's always an exciting time of year, and the anticipation of the season ahead. It's great.
Yeah, it's right, isn't it? I've started to notice an uptick of skiing videos on my social media, and it's started to make me get a little bit in the mood. I'm looking at my diary and desperately trying to find little windows where I could head up to Zermatt or Saas-Fee or something and just get some turns in, before it all starts to go crazy. I need to really make some time for myself to go and do something like that. So, just trying to do the best I can. So sorry about the time difference. We're literally worlds apart. There's a huge ocean in between us. Why don't you guys start off by giving me, I don't mind who goes first, but maybe give me a bit of a background as to you personally and kind of your skiing background. I think the thing that I like to do with my podcast is to get to know you guys as individuals, and tell the story that way, and then we can move a little bit on to PSIC later on and talk more in depth about that.
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Perry.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Dave. My name is Jeff Marks, and I'm based in Banff, Alberta. Originally from Jasper, so I'm not too far away. I'm just a few hours south now. So grew up in the mountains, national parks, and got into ski teaching when I was 18. Got my level 1 at Marmot Basin with Wendy Reed. She was my first snow school director ever, and then it just kind of went from there. I had originally actually been looking at a career in the hospitality industry, hotels, restaurants, things like that. But kind of like you inferred there earlier on, Dave, you try the ski industry out and get into it, and it tends to grab people, which it did with me for sure. So that's kind of been the majority of my my career ever since, with some off-season summertime stints here and there. Season in Jasper, and then sort of a quick timeline. I came down to Banff in 1997 and started working with the club ski program. I was here for 10 years, and then I had an opportunity to actually go to Niseko village in Japan and help them get a snow school off the ground.
Oh, cool.
That sort of served a more international market than what it was doing at the time. So that became a 4-year, an initial 6-month experiment that turned into 4 years. And then back here to Banff, started working with the CSIA in 2011 as a program coordinator for Western Canada. And then in 2019, applied for and got the role of National Program Director with CSIA. So it's been a very ski industry focused career for me, and just love living here in the mountains and having kind of those two definite seasons. I got my fishing shirt on here this morning. I spent a lot of time doing that in the summer and mountain biking and camping and stuff. We're in a pretty great place here, but I'm excited for the winter to come. I was saying to Perry, I went for a run there yesterday. Did an uphill run and managed to find myself in the snow for the first time this season. So you guys kind of got me.
Yeah, heading up there. That's what I'll be doing soon.
Yeah.
When it comes down a bit more, I've bored the listeners to death about this, but I've got a little trials bike which you can you ride those anywhere, and I normally go up to see the snow as well. Like as soon as it comes down to a reasonable place, right, we're going to go and make sure it's there.
You'll enjoy a conversation with Mark Sedgwick. He's a trials bike guy.
Oh yeah, okay. He's definitely going on the list then. What I was going to ask you actually, just while you were going through that, which I think it's definitely quite interesting, and this is just before we go on to you, Perry. But when you went out to Niseko to set up everything there, how did you find it? Like in terms of skiing cultural differences between the two countries, what they were doing, that they weren't doing, that kind of thing? Like, what were the things that made that an interesting project?
Oh man, everything. It was really, it was fascinating. I skipped one piece of my history prior to that, which was a year at school in Japan. So I went over there to Niseko with some language capabilities.
Oh wow, okay.
Which was super helpful for obvious reasons. But as far as the ski culture goes, I mean, we actually embarked on some really interesting projects at the time. One of them was to open an area of the mountain that was closed because traditionally skiing off-piste in Japan is not that common for various reasons.
Yeah.
This one was it was a closed area. Have you been to Niseko? If I spoke about it, would you kind of know?
I haven't been to Niseko. I haven't done anything like that. I get stuck like here in my home resort, and I never seem to get out of it. I have to make a really big effort.
Yeah.
You
should definitely put it on your list.
Yeah,
for sure. But just one example of that kind of cultural question was this particular area of the ski resort had been closed for years because of essentially because of the aspect of avalanches and danger basically to the public. And we ended up actually working on a project with a gentleman actually from Canmore, Alberta, who came over and helped the ski patrol at Niseko Village over a couple of year project, actually work on mitigation of avalanche risk, and then eventually skier access, which led to skier compaction of that same area, which made it safer. And now it's actually an open part of the ski area. So that was an interesting, a really interesting process to go through. And I think like anything, changes like that they require a lot of heavy lifting, and they're also, super emotional when it comes to, what's been done in the past and stuff. So it's I guess there's some parallels there. But the skiing culture is great. Japan has so much history in skiing, and they're passionate about it. And it was a really fun time. And we brought an international component to the resort at that time, to the existing snow school. It was there previously. So it was.
So was the idea of that to sort of drag more international guests towards that area then?
Yeah, when I got there in 2007, sort of the initial what I'll call sort of Niseko getting on the international scene with Malaysia, Europe. It had started to happen already. Australia obviously is a huge visitor number there, and then so that need became clear to them, and so they were looking for someone to come and help build that component of the ski resort to suit that market. So that was kind of the function that we held to begin with, and then it just grew and we settled in and ended up there for 4 years. It was it was a pretty amazing experience actually.
Okay, cool. It's always interesting to hear about things like that. It's a bit of a tangent to what we were talking about, but I see my role on the podcast as someone who has to kind of, if I was listening to this in the car, I'd be like, I wanted that question asked. So like, I would, that's what I'm trying to do with that. But okay, cool. And Perry, what about you? How do we, tell me more, how do I get to know you?
Unlike Jeff, I did not grow up in the mountains. We were talking earlier about Canada. It's a large country with not a lot of people. I grew up in Saskatchewan, very flat. And how I got into skiing is at the time, out of high school, the thought at the time was to be a high school phys ed teacher. And that, without making the story too long, that's kind of what led me to my first introduction to ski instruction. Through the school, I took a course, and one of the things that really inspired me is the guys that taught the course at the time. And I thought it was, my way to see the world, because, I kind of, not unlike this, I heard their story and went, wow, that's cool. Mm-hmm. So from there, I went to Banff, a different era than Jeff, but, started working in Banff as a ski instructor. I went through my certification levels at that point in time. Probably my first kind of cool, biggest eye-opener to the international stage was I worked for a number of years in Taroa, New Zealand, North Island, and in that ski school, even that was kind of my first introduction to work with other instructors from Canada. Because again, if you're working at West at the time, very little interaction with people from Eastern Canada. But anyway, so I got to work with fellow instructors from Eastern Canada, the fairly good contingent from the U.S., mostly Mammoth based, and Europeans. There were some. There's a couple of German instructors, a couple of Swiss, French, and when I say French, like French from France. It was cool. It was an eye opener, and it was really cool as a fairly young instructor to witness, have conversations about how everyone approached it, and that was cool. And then my career kind of took, most of my mountain time was in two different eras. One in Banff, and then I was really lucky to be in Whistler in some fairly early days. Like for those that are listening, at one time the two mountains that make up Whistler today, Whistler and Blackcomb, were once competitors, and I worked with Blackcomb prior to the merger, and that was a real cool time because our growth curve was straight up, and those are real exciting times. I was lucky enough to be the ski school director there at Blackcomb, and then Whistler Blackcomb after the merger. And a few things took me back to Banff in the early 2000s, and went to a role there that worked for all three ski resorts in a business development role. That's where I met Jeff for the first time, and we had the opportunity to work together there. I was out of the ski industry for 12 years. I spent some time in a little place in most Canadians have heard about it, Tofino. So it's fairly remote, but known for, which is a real weird thing in Canada, it's known for surfing.
Oh, yeah?
But spent some time there.
Okay.
And then maybe to round out the skiing side of it, went through a bit of a health issue. I mean, earlier you were mentioning about your charity work with kids that had lost a parent to cancer. I had definitely a health issue with cancer, which I got through and whatever. But when I got through that process and went through the healing process, I had a lot of soul searching and went, you know what, my first love is to be on a ski hill in that community, in that environment. And that's what brought me back. More recently, I was the managing director of the CSA. And now, with Jeff and a few other founders, we've started this organization, the PSIC, or the Professional Ski Instructors of Canada. So that's kind of the synopsis of how I got here.
That's really cool. Can I, we did a bit of a throwback with Jeff, but I'm going to take you back just there to I think it's a really interesting question. So that time that you spent in New Zealand, where there were instructors from all over the world, if I've got that right.
Yep.
What was it like back then? Were the styles that everyone skied in and taught in very different?
The opinions were different.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the actual style, like if you really analyze it, I don't know if we were that different, but the way the different, countries and individuals thought about it, everybody was kind of firmly defending their
method as such.
Yeah, their method, if you will, which I don't know at the end of the day if it was actually that different, but the opinions and how it was expressed was for sure different. So it meant for some colorful discussions for sure, which I thought was pretty healthy and pretty it was exciting to be a part of, right? Like it was exciting to wrestle with your own beliefs. Is your belief actually true or not true, or etc. So that, again, a very cool growth opportunity to be exposed to the way everybody looks at it.
Yeah, I think there's probably two things that come out of that in terms of what I'm thinking. But the certainly, I think if the minute that you close your mind to new ideas in skiing, or more to the point, the ability to watch other people and think, oh wow, that's a bit of a better way of doing things than I am currently doing it. I've had 3 or 4 experiences like that with my instructors over the last few seasons, where I've just looked at some of the stuff that they've been doing. I'm just like, well, that's just genius. It's absolute genius what they're doing, and I'm totally going to steal that. That's the way I think. If you keep your mind open and you don't say, okay, well, this is the way that skiing is taught and that's it. You've got to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, and try them out yourself on the hill, right? See if they work or they don't work. the other thing that came up when you were talking about that, in terms of kind of thinking about method, and it goes back a little bit, because I know that you were involved, you guys were involved a little bit in this year, or 2023 Interski with Canada, was one of the thoughts, and I've said this on a few other podcasts, one of the thoughts that really struck me about this year's Interski was just how generic the skiing was from a visual perspective across the various nations. It almost looked to me like everyone's come into like, this is, what there wasn't. And there's quite a famous, I don't know who, you find it on YouTube somewhere, there's quite a famous Canadian video that was on YouTube somewhere that was released. I don't think it was this Interski or the one before, it might even be the one before that or the one before that. It's a Canadian video, and it was the original, it was like the forerunner of, here's a bunch of skiers from different nations and here's how they ski. Can't remember the details of it. Listener, I will put it in the podcast notes. But in that video, there were distinct national skiing styles in terms of how the skiers looked on the hill, and that seems to have slightly disappeared, and that the skiers from various nations have all become a little bit homogenous now in terms of what they look like when they ski. Is that something that you saw the last time, or in 2023, or is it just me that's seeing that?
No, I think it's accurate, and I would, because I think, and again, this is my perspective on it, is over time, there's a couple of things, one of which is Interski has done its job, like, over history as it's moved forward, because it is this great platform for countries to share their approaches, their ideas, and so on. And when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we're dealing with the same forces on the same gear and so on. So to me, it kind of makes sense that that's the way it's evolved. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it too is the internet, like all of our access to YouTube and whatever, as we're not the different skiing nations around the world, we're not in silos anymore. And the cool thing about the last Interski in Finland, a great event. It was an event that, I think had extra energy because of, coming out of COVID, getting the world back together again. So the spirit of collaboration and openness, I didn't, because my first, I was definitely a participant in it, but not on a team member at the time. But my first Interski, and I'm really going to date myself, my first Interski was 1987 in Banff, where, at that moment in time, my young perspective at that time would be the countries were there to show their stuff, if you will. And you fast forward to the last Interski, and it was the spirit was completely collaboration. Oh, what can I learn here? What are you guys doing? What's this country doing? Oh, like just the takeaways. We're in a different place today, and everybody's going, like, everybody kind of went there with, oh, did you see what the Swiss are doing? That's cool. Or did you see, what the Koreans are doing? Like that was, as opposed to, hey, this is our stuff.
Yeah.
And our stuff is right. That's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly, I suppose if you take it back even 20, 30 years, or the time, whenever it was that you were in New Zealand, for example, that time, you could spot an Austrian formed skier coming down the hill, right? You could spot a Swiss guy coming down the hill, you spot a French guy. Like that was even evident in that video from, must be 4 Interskis ago on that video. It's very distinct. So you can sort of tell a French skier, when you see him. Same with the Swiss, and it was especially pronounced back then. I think the Swiss are slightly more homogenous now with the rest of the world, but it's definitely something that seems to have slightly gone away. Like you can't very obviously pick someone's style and say that is a person that was formed in that style, because that, like you say, I think it's to do with the information age, right? You can see anything you want to see online and copy it, right? Or make it your own.
One of the things too, Dave, so I've had the opportunity to be on, I was the coach of the CSIA team in Finland, and then I was on the team for the 2 previous Interskis. One thing that was different this time was the pitch of the demonstration slope, and so it changed the tactics a little bit of the teams kind of all at once, where it was more about speed maintenance and and keeping that going, which then also changes what you've got to do with the ski on the snow, which is pretty similar if you want to, keep it, stay at expert speeds and that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just interesting to look at all those factors and what sort of dominates when the goal is X and everyone's on the same pitch. The parameters for doing that all differently start to, like you say, they start to constrict as well.
When you talk about the pitch, are you saying that it was slightly shallower than it was 4 years previously in Bulgaria?
Yeah, so it was definitely shallower than Bulgaria and Ushuaia before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting because that does not really show up in. I didn't see that mentioned anywhere, but that does not. Right. It's tough, right, for that to show up when you're sort of looking at a front-on video of the demo slope. You don't really have a perception of how steep it is. Because that obviously, like you say,
I think it's just different enough.
Yeah. Trying to carry speed down something, you don't get the same forces acting upon the individual, do you? So you don't see. I suppose the way that you can do it is you have to add speed, right?
Yeah. And Dave, if I could add to Jeff's comment too, is in Finland at Levi, not only was it a very consistent pitch, but the snow it could not have been better.
Yeah.
The snow, it was actually. So I think everyone skiing would have led to that because just the quality and the consistency, it was unbelievable. It couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
It could not have been better.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. It's nice, right? Better than slush or sheet ice.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, so we got to know you guys, and I'm very grateful that you joined me, and I appreciate it. Let's move on to Professional Ski Instructors of Canada. What is it? And why? Why is it come into existence? What are you kind of hoping to achieve with it?
If you don't mind, Jeff, I'll take kind of a first cut at this, and then Jeff by all means can backfill it. So why is one? We as an organization, we believe in competition. Like we're bringing a product to the market in Canada, and there are other players. And I know some countries across the world are different, but there are a few different players in this market. One thing that we're and again, there's no getting away from. We both Jeff and I and others have had experience in some of the other organizations in Canada. One thing that we're really excited about is how we're set up and how nimble we can be. In this new organization, we've got one main feedback loop, which is what we call the ISC, which stands for Industry Steering Committee. So all of our partner resorts have a person on that committee, and typically it's their choice, but typically it's a ski school director. So they've got a direct conduit to us, and we got a direct conduit to them. So when it comes to developing curriculum, programming, and whatever, we're in tight with them, and where we're going with that is we're excited at how quickly we can move things to market, and so, in some cases it's people are concerned with you don't change, you move slow and whatever, but we've got a bit of a different approach. Like we think we like things that matter in today's world, if you will, are things like inclusion and diversity and so on, and the market is changing quickly, and we're coming to the market with products that meet those needs, if you will, like to make sure that as here in Canada, and I'm pretty sure it's no different around the world, but that the demographics, people's backgrounds are changing dramatically, and we want to be inclusive. We need to be inclusive. We need to look different, and we need to move quickly to that. And then maybe I'll just add one last thing as well is to serve the instructor community, and the viability of it as a profession, which in Canada means for sure at one end of the scale there are full-time pros. It is what they do, right? And then on the other end of the scale is in certain areas of Canada, being a ski instructor might be the weekend hobby, and I'll be careful even how I use that word, but it might be the weekend endeavor. But does it make sense there? Can you pay for your expenses? Is it worthwhile, and so on? Yeah. And we believe our approach of working very closely with the industry will make that the profession of ski instruction more viable, and we're excited about that whole process. And that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where we're at is to move quickly, embrace technology, in some of our curriculum, and tools that we're going to give to the instructor community. It's going to include things like animation and, all sorts of resources that we're embracing the speed of change. And that's one of our main approaches going forward. Maybe I'll turn it over to Jeff for a bit too.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up really in terms of the why. I mean, one of the things that has driven us to where we are quite quickly is, I'll just generalize and say the ski industry in Canada coming to us looking for kind of the aspects that Perry's referring to. So it's been an interesting, the timeline's pretty short still. But even in that short timeline, the conversations have been really valuable and kind of robust in terms of what has come to us in terms of how we can help. So it's not just us saying, hey, this is what we want to do. A lot of what we are doing and are about to do has come, through that feedback loop that Perry mentioned directly to us. So that's really driving us a lot of what we're doing at the moment. Industry steering committee engagement, that's going to happen very quickly with a bunch of the things that we have devised already. And then I think after that, it'll be kind of exciting to see if we've answered that question, if I could put it that way, if we've responded to the demands, which I think we will.
So let me just, because I'm just going to kind of try and fill out what I know and you shoot me down, tell me if I'm wrong. So in Canada, it's not the same model as in Europe. So, for example, where I am, there's 10 competing ski schools, for example. Where you are, as I understand it, the ski area owns the mountain from a simplification point of view. They own the mountain, they own the lodge, the restaurant, the ski school, the ticket office, the whole lot. It's one entity that is, I don't know, like Banff Mountain Inc. does the whole thing. Am I right so far?
But, and Dave, let me expand on that a little bit. So one, in Canada, and again, we, in some regards, it's very different than other countries in the world, probably especially Europe as well, because, and I'll start with this, like one, ski instruction in Canada, it's outside in Canada, okay? It's outside of the competitive stream. Like it's not, we're not part of the Coaches Federation. So if you were, and I'm going to use a few different examples, if you were bantam hockey in Canada, you would eventually be, so hockey would be here, then there would be the provincial, like BC, I'm in British Columbia, so BC Hockey, which then would report to Hockey Canada, which would then report to Sport Canada. So there is kind of a governing hierarchy with sports. Ski instruction does not fit in that category. So there is no government, like the government of Canada has not put any organization given that right. So number one. And then to your second point, so if there is kind of the way it works in Canada, and the US is somewhat similar, probably more like in Jeff and I's interaction with our US colleagues, there's a lot of collaboration there because we are very similar in that regard. So if you take a resort in Canada, the way the laws work, they have the rights for any commercial activity. So in which case most ski schools are owned by the resorts. And there's not very many of them. If the resort has a concession ski school, that is 100% done at the ski resort's discretion. So there would be an agreement in place like that, because the ski resort holds that card, if you will.
Can I just clarify? So by concession ski school, so that you would mean, say, so there will be a, I don't know, X resort ski school, but if there was another ski school, that would be an authorized ski school again, by X resort, right?
It's almost non-existent, but if it existed, it would still be at the authority of the ski area.
So the ski area essentially puts a big fence around its land and says activity that happens in here is kind of ours to manage.
Right. Like, if I compare it to some of what I know in Europe, like in Europe, if so-and-so wanted to run a ski school, it might be maybe an approval process from the municipality.
Yeah.
Like it's a different model. Here, I'll use where, one of the resorts that's close to me, if a ski school, Whistler Blackcomb owns the ski school, and if they wanted to allow a concession, and that's a big if, then that approval process is through them.
I understand. Okay.
So, and I'll say this is one of the so that if you go back to us, the PSIC and our structure and so on, that's why this connection to industry is so important, because they are the business people, they are the people with the skin in the game, and those are the people that we need to help. They're in the ski industry. Like if you compare it to Europe, it's a younger business here.
Yeah.
Capital intensive and so on, and we just view that link as very important to not only our success, but obviously the ski industry success and the viability of the ski instructor community in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that then begs the question, because at some point, presumably industry, and by industry I mean the ski resorts in Canada, and presumably elsewhere, right? Maybe in North America as well, have come to you guys and said, we're not necessarily getting what we need. Can you help us in that respect? Would that be accurate?
I think. Yeah, it is accurate, and I can comment on this, and then again, I'll just speak more. But one of the things that we're in, because I'll jump right into kind of our curriculum, right? And I even think of the couple of questions you sent in advance, Dave. So if I would argue most instructional bodies around the world, they've got two main components. One of which is you have to understand skiing, right? So everything around the physics of skiing, that's kind of necessary to teach, to be able to do our jobs.
Yeah.
The second thing is everybody's got a little different label, but it'd be the science of teaching. Like, so how do you actually teach? How do you help people? How do you make it happen? Right. Yeah. And our approach has those two buckets, like others. And again, we think we've got a little different approach, but we've got those two buckets for sure. We also have a third element, if you will, of what we call our method. And our third element is what we call the adventure. And this has come out of very, direct conversations with the industry. And what the adventure at a very high level encompasses is it encompasses going into an understanding of what the purpose of the job of ski instructor is. So that what the purpose is, and that involves a lot of the other, and I'll use this label, softer skills, right? Like, so one, you got to teach people, you got to help them, you got to keep them safe, and so on. But the adventure goes into more, the softer skills that matter, which is the entire mountain experience. And some, at some of the destinations resorts, that might mean making sure that the lunch reservation is made, and some of the softer skills, and understanding the purpose, and celebrating some of those elements of the purpose, so that part isn't lost. Because sometimes, in experience, and I'm sure this isn't foreign to other people, is when you watch a young instructor, often they lose like they get it right, but they've lost the context, right? Like where it's not when I go out and teach a particular public, is the goal to ski a 10-meter radius turn? Like, is that what's matter? And that's an example of, that's it may be valid, but it also may have lost sight of what the purpose is. And so, our third bucket does a deep dive into both educating and evaluating the instructor's ability to deliver on the purpose. I'll let Jeff kind of backfill on that, but that's kind of a...
Yeah, for sure.
That has really resonated with the industry as both A, we've listened, and then B, as we've provided this feedback and rolled it out in our approach.
Yeah, I think before, I'll let you go at that as well, Jeff, but before, I think from my perspective, it's something that some of my instructors do amazingly well, and in the past, I agree with you, I've seen other instructors who only know skiing and then they only deliver skiing. But if you've been around a while, you kind of get to understand that not all ski lessons are about ski lessons. You know, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, so I won't bore the listener with it again. But a lot of it is about being a good host. It's about welcoming the client to your area, to your region, showing them around, giving them the simple things that help them to get better at skiing if that's what they want, and making them feel welcome. And like you say, picking up on other those little soft skills. Here's a good place to have lunch. Here's a good, and that I think is especially important in an age when I guess ski areas are competing with each other for business. They want that client to come back, and they want to have been. They want the client to have been made welcome, and that isn't in a lot of textbooks.
One more point in that same context, Dave, is like going on a ski vacation or again, depending on the dynamics, or going up to a ski hill for the day and whatever. It's, obviously, we're passionate like everybody is, and it's a worthwhile endeavor, but the stakes are high. Right? Like, skiing, it's not the cheapest endeavor, and therefore, people want to make sure that they get it right. And time with a good, or a great ski pro, it ensures that whole thing, right? Like, it ensures, again, the basics, like learning to ski, getting better, and all the rest of it, but all the soft skills as well, making sure that the person's experience embraces it all, like that they feel welcomed in the mountain culture, and again, the whole experience is a great time, right? Because it's, we all know this, right? And maybe it's something that we lose sight of as instructors, but the mechanics of going on a day on a ski hill, they're complex, right? Like, you need to get rental gear, you name it, and any time that we can help and have more time spent on the essence of the great things of the experience, everybody wins.
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
And I think too, like the I'll say the responsibility and the immense nature of what's out there. Like the moment you're a ski instructor, the moment, it doesn't matter how experienced you are, whether just this is your first day in the suit today, or you've been doing it for a long time. The fact is that the value of the person in front of you doesn't change, right? So there's even though, ski instructing organizations across the world, we all have certification levels, we all have, ways that we acknowledge that. But for the guest that stands in front of any of those people at any place along that continuum, that ultimately, that's not what it boils down to. What it boils down to is this conversation here about, the guest experience and the retention of guests, and providing that safe, fun learning environment for them to kind of prosper in. It's a big deal, and that is, that's where a lot of our conversations have been thus far with certainly with the industry partners that have also, jumped on board in the early stages and want to be involved and want to have input on where we go. That is what bubbles to the top in every single conversation is, let's build a foundation and go from there, because where the ski instructor spends their time is in the snow school. It's not necessarily with the certification body. The days that you encounter that process are quite limited if you look at the overall time you spend as a ski pro in a pro room. So really trying to find out how to make the most of those times and really build where we can help bring the expertise to the table is huge. So we're focusing on professional development first, both in the short term and the long term, and certification second, which are kind of the milestone markers of skill improvement and development and accomplishment and all those kinds of things. So we could probably talk about what is a good ski pro for a long time, and how do you build that, but part of it is we've got to connect them to the industry, and so that's such a big part of what we're trying to do.
I'm with you there. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately, certainly in the last 2 years, is just how important, and I think you have a better opportunity there with that kind of fencing of the ski area as such, where everything is under a sort of a uniform banner, if you like. You have a much better opportunity to control that than we do here. It's one of the things that annoys me a little bit, is because there's a lot of potential links in the chain here for the guest experience. So if you think of any given lesson, let's say I'm working out of Morjan on the 23rd of December this year, say. I'll go, maybe I might meet the clients at the restaurant at the bottom of the lift. I go in there, I know it's a pretty good restaurant, and we can have a nice coffee in there, right? So that's a safe place for me to start my thing. I know what I'm going to get in there. But every now and then, if I get there too early, for example, I know that it's not open at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, right? That's a weak link already. So if I've forgotten that it's a Tuesday, for example, it won't be open because they have, I don't know, Tuesday morning off or Sunday morning off or something like that. Then, in the old days, this used to be a thing with Morjan. The bloke who used to run, who was in charge of like helping clients onto the lift at the bottom, was a mate of the guy who used to own the lift company. And he was one of the most miserable guys you ever met in your life, right? And you would sometimes look at the way that he treated clients. He regarded them as essentially an inconvenience, to his day of sitting in the office reading the paper. So he'd be there and he'd be kind of pushing people on the lift and shouting at them if they got it wrong, right? What kind of bullshit is that? I was so happy the day that got done. But he was replaced later on by like a stoner, it's like, Jesus Christ, like this is the first contact clients have with your ski area is this guy. This is the guy you chose. It's nonsense. You get up to the top. The guys at the top are pretty cool, and then you kind of you come out the top of the lift, and there's a bit of an icy chute because no one's kind of bothered to put any snow on it, and you're just like, oh my god. Then you go down to the beginner slope, and the woman there is also the same mentality. She's like, oh, these guys are just an inconvenience to me. I'm sitting here in my office. I don't really want to help them. She's like, why are your children not able to get up on a lift? It's like, it's part of your job actually to help them to get onto this lift, but they don't get it. And there's all sorts of kind of links like that, So when everything is kind of independently or privately owned, you haven't got a vetting system as to who's doing a decent job and who isn't, and it's not really addressed at all by the Office of Tourism or the region that's supposed to be looking after this area. You would think that there would be like a big annual general meeting or something where all the ski schools and all the lift operators and all the restaurant owners and stuff is like, you guys, if you want to operate in this region, you have to be here, and we're going to tell you about how we're looking after guests, because if they have a crappy experience here, or the guy at the bottom of the lift shouts at them, they're not going to come back here next year, they're going to go to somewhere else. And it doesn't happen here. And it kind of annoys me that not everybody is on the same boat, on the same page, because they just don't realise it from a tourism perspective. And that's why I think what you're doing is quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, and sorry to interrupt, Dave. But
that's fine. I was ranting, so it's fine.
No. Whoa, hey.
Yeah, easy, Dave, easy.
Well, I mean, we're excited as well, because we are part of kind of what you described. You wish you had was, we just this past week, Perry and I were both at some major events of the ski industry in Canada, which in the West, Canada West Ski Areas Association. And then, Ontario has an organization, OSRA, and then, Quebec has an organization, Atlantic Canada has an organization, our central provinces have an organization. And it is essentially what you described, like I say, what you wish you had. And one of the great things there is that there isn't just connectivity between the different touch points within resorts. There's connectivity between, this department of Resort A and that department and the same department of Resort B, and they're so those bridges are available. I'll put it that way, and one of those bridges as well is snow school committees inside of those organizations, and we're in the room with those people and those discussions, and it does create a situation where for the PSIC, we are we do understand that when we work with Resort A, it has an effect on Resort B, and they communicate and so on. And best practices, it's a bit of an overused term, but best practices are best practices, and so we've got an opportunity to influence those, but also to follow those. And it's so it's a great group of people to be involved in, because the reality is, when you strip it all down, kind of like our conversation about how different is technique. Well, how different is guest service? The human that comes to the ski resort is interested in having a great experience, whatever that means to them, and that's what everybody's aiming at. And so it's a really it's an exciting place to be, and an exciting groups of people to be involved in, and to be in those conversations, because it changes things quite quickly. The moment there's a thing that should be done, whether it's regulatory or whether it's just proven that it works, everybody wants that, which is awesome.
If I can maybe just add, Dave, to Jeff's comment as well, it's kind of cool. I mean, obviously, or maybe it's not obvious, but in the ski resort landscape in Canada, they're competitors, right? And some are owned by the bigger families of resorts like Vail Resorts, Altera, and so on. And there's some independent and so on. They're on one level they're competitive, but Jeff was referring to some of these events or conferences. The cool thing about it, though, is at the same time they're very collaborative, right? Like they're and I'll use a quote from an old colleague of mine: "A high tide floats all boats," right? So there's definitely this this spirit to working together, because I think this is another thing in Canada where we're a large country, but very few people, like 37 million across the entire country, and everybody's upping their game this way, right? And again, I think we all benefit from that for sure. So the spirit's kind of cool to be a part of.
There are only 37 million people in Canada?
Yeah. California is bigger than all of us.
Are you serious? I did not know that. I assumed it was much larger. I know the landmass is larger. I guess you've got all that bit at the top, right, where no one lives.
You get two of us on a Zoom call together, and the economy slows down for a little bit, and
I have no idea. Jeff and I are both out west, but we're if I was to drive to see him, it's 11 hours.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's about time someone came up with like teleportation as a thing. I don't know why no one's working on that. Tell me this, because this is the obvious question that I have to ask: is that if I'm a member of your organization, to whose interest, or have we gone beyond this? You can tell me. Because it's a frequent topic that's come up within the British organisation, which I was a member of for a while. I'm not anymore, but I'm with Swiss Snowsports now. And the frequent thing is like, who is this organisation actually for? Is it a members organisation, or does it serve the shareholders of the company, or any of this kind of stuff? If you've got a committee, or you're sort of one of your objectives is to listen to industry and put in place something that helps them, how do you also balance that off against the people that are going to be members of your organisation? That seems to me an obvious question to ask, and I have to ask it because people would want that.
And good question. I'd be happy to answer that, David, because a couple things. One, are we a member organization? Yes, but I will qualify that light. Like here locally, I'm a member of a gym. So I have rights to use the gym and whatever. Can I go in on any given day and say, hey, I want that piece of equipment moved? Or no, I can't do that. I'm a member. I get to use the process. And if I complain to the ownership of that gym, would they respond? Probably, but within the context of it, it is their business, right? Mm-hmm. So we are not, like in our governance structure, we're not member based. And I'll say it, we're not. So one of the things that we feel quite strongly about that will define us, like when it comes, and I can give a few examples, when it comes to giving an assignment to a trainer to deliver programming, that's going to be based on competency, like that, and that's it, and will be defined. And we've had this question as well, like, what legitimizes us? Well, what legitimizes us is what if people, the ski instructor community, buys our programs, then that's the legitimacy of it. That's it. And we do, we put quite a bit of thought into how we're set up, which is, we want to be nimble, we want to move, we want to deliver value, and that's going to determine our fate. And obviously, we're quite confident that we're going to deliver value as well. And I'll use an example. As an example, the government of Canada doesn't mandate what phone I use. I buy that phone because I like that product, and that's going to be the same. Like we believe our product will help the industry and therefore help the ski instructor community, because you can't separate those two. And in Canada, although Jeff mentioned the area operators associations are broken up by region, but I can give this stat. In Canada, this ski school business is $150 million. It's not insignificant. There's stake in the game in a very capital intensive business. And if we can help, the area operators deliver on that business, then that will have a direct impact on the livelihood of ski instructors without question. So, that is how we're set up. We're not, and we're also, because people will ask this too, and we're very confident and excited about the value that we bring to the market in terms of its pricing as well, because the way we're set up as an organization, which is a corporation, is we're lean and we're nimble. We don't, we are defined by putting cool products out in the marketplace. That is it. We have no. I don't have an office. Jeff doesn't have an office. We're both talking to you from our living rooms. In this day and age, we're going to remain nimble and lean and focus on the end product.
Okay.
So that hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, I think so. I can see the rising tide floats all boats argument, right? Like it's you provide something for the areas to make their overall guest experience better. More people go skiing, more work arrives for ski instructors.
Exactly right.
And if
maybe I can just even add, Dave, is as we have these conversations, it starts to open up more conversations about more opportunity. And I don't think this is an original, but one of our colleagues in this, a guy by the name of Mark Sedgwick, his background, originally from Australia, moved to Canada, was in a very senior executive position at Whistler Blackcomb, and now working with us. He's brought up this term zero ceiling. So my point is we believe as an organization, whether it be us internally, the people that we train, and so on, that learning curve never stops. Like we're never going to get to a point and go, okay, we're done. And that's also then dovetailed into the conversations with the ski industry. Like, there's so many potentials of where we can keep going next. And we're really excited about that opportunity for us to provide value. It's not finite. It doesn't end. It's already dovetailed into what could we do to help. And this is another philosophical question, but I think we as an organization can also help the ski industry globally within Canada, which is like there's another organization called the Canadian Ski Council, which its mission is to create new skiers, return visits, and so on, where, given our structure, we can help on that front as well. And it is in our interest to do it. Where some organizations might go, well, no, that's, our job is to train the instructor, that's it, right? Well, again, that's pretty, I would say that's a bit on the short-sighted end of the continuum, because if we don't create new skiers, like here's an example, the marketplace in Canada, it looks different than it did 10, 20, 30 years ago. Do we as an instructor community, do we mirror that? Do we look like that? Or I'll say it, do we skew older, white, male? Like, do we look what the new community looks like? And no, we got to catch up. We got to fix that. We got to be inclusive. We got to make sure that we have the educational tools so that people from many diverse backgrounds can take this up as a profession. And that's a big picture goal, but we got to deliver. And on the other side of that, the opportunity is unbelievable, because here's the cool thing. When I started skiing, the propensity, the average Canadian was not predisposed to taking a lesson. I'm going to use the label new Canadian. A new Canadian probably won't go skiing unless they have access to a lesson. Like it's a completely different dynamics than it was a few years ago. and we're excited about meeting that challenge and contributing to that opportunity.
I share a similar view in that every now and then you come across, and it's changing as the age of ski school directors here gets younger, and younger people come into the tourism jobs that exist around here, certainly in terms of the strategic tourism jobs, is that there is a potentially limitless number of people that you can attract to go skiing. The old school mindset is like the pie is this big, and if you come in as a new ski school, you steal a part of my pie, and therefore I hate you. It doesn't need to be like that. I've said this before, and I say it to anyone who listen, is we can, we haven't even scratched the surface really of all the people that we could bring to go skiing. And this is one of the reasons why I was quite excited, well, I am already excited for the ski day that I'm setting up for the charity, right? Like, we're going to touch a whole bunch of people there, never even considered going skiing. And we can do that, especially with modern tech. I sound like a million years old when I say stuff like that, but with how specific you can be with modern marketing tools, like Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, you can almost like target down to the individual person. And there's no limit on the people that you can try to attract to skiing. Maybe apart from the barrier of the cost to entry and the cost of like the faff of getting actually that person to be standing in front of your instructor. That's another thing that I would like to make it much, much easier. But it's potentially limitless. I don't see any reason why, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you look like. Doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. Doesn't matter your gender. Doesn't matter what you think about anything. Come on, we should be trying to just get as many people to come skiing as we possibly can. It's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah. Dave, I got one quick story that I've told a couple of times, but I had the opportunity. So OSRA, which stands for Ontario Ski Resorts Association, they did an event last year in front of City Hall in downtown Toronto. So right downtown in the city, they got real creative. They put snow on top of the foyer that's out in front of City Hall, and then we invited people at no charge to take advantage of it. So obviously the profile of some of the people that took advantage of that, they were probably people that were challenged from a resource point of view. And I remember seeing this one thing, and then the president of OSRA got interviewed. So I saw this young gentleman, probably be 14 years old, do his first couple of turns on a slope, and the smile, and he was just it was life changing. And the president of OSRA, in my opinion, got a fairly unfair comment from the media, which basically said, well, why are you exposing this kid to this experience when he may never be able to afford to do it? My point of my story is I think the exact opposite. I think that kid's life just changed. I saw the look on his face. I thought, the thrill, the compassion of the instructors that he was working with is, I think that kid will figure something out. He'll figure out, and maybe it's to go skiing, maybe it's to work at a ski resort, whatever, that it was a life-changing moment. And I'm sure the kid's direction changed based on that experience. And that's, I tell that story because that is such a cool opportunity that we all have, right? Like, and people, they will figure it out because the experience of skiing, the mountain culture, it's life-changing. We have an opportunity that I can't think many industries actually have a parallel to, right? No. Like, it's just so cool.
It's true. And you never know when you're going to touch someone. It's a bit unfair, right, for the media to have a go at that guy and say, because they don't know what if. They don't know what's going to happen in the future of that kid's life, right? But we all have, I mean, you've been in touch with enough people, enough kids or whatever across your various careers, right? And you never know when you're going to drop that one magic phrase or piece of advice or even life advice to people that's going to stay with them forever. It's happened to me. I know when it was, if you want the story, but it's nothing to do with skiing. But, I remember where I was, and my uncle told me that it's okay to think your own mind and have, your own opinions on stuff. That, for me, was like a light bulb.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not alone on this. Like, someone else knows that I'm thinking my own way. And it was an absolute revelation. And you never know, right? You never know how you're going to touch someone's life. And so that's the reason why you've got to do those things.
Yeah. Like, and I'm thinking now, Dave, to your sort of previous question about, the membership. Like, are we membership driven, or are we industry driven, or how does that work? And I think, like, even what we're talking about here now about the skiing public and those, those moments you're describing, and we absolutely all have those moments. There's that reality within our industry too, where in Canada we've got ski areas that are this small, and we've got ski areas that are the giants of the industry. But the reality is that they coexist as well, and so those little moments where they're commonly referred to as feeder ski resorts. The Prairie Ski Resort or the City Hill or they're eventually, those skiers, if we do this right, they're going to end up at the bigger area, and they're going to strive for that because they want the excitement of the different mountain experience, and the adventure of that is I think everybody gets that when they start to slide, and we're seeing more and more opportunity to again think outside the box a bit and let ourselves expand on all of those opportunities within the ski industry as well. So not just what can we create out of that new skier, but how can we connect the young new ski school director from the tiny little ski area in northern Alberta to Russ Wood, who's the general manager of snow schools for the largest resort in Canada, and there's all sorts of those I think meaningful connections available when we do stuff like this. That's already starting to happen within our industry steering committee. You've got a brand new snow school director with a ton of great ideas and excitement and everything connected to the resources and the long time experience of the Wendy Reeds of the world down in Fernie, and Gord Fielding here at Banff, Russ Wood, and so on. So it's that stuff gets me excited, and I think that's where we really are looking, like Perry said earlier, we're looking outside the box, and we're trying to be nimble and not sort of stay in our whatever you might consider to be our lane, if you want to put it that way. We're just ready to help. So then back to the membership real quick, I think people want to be a part of that. So regardless of whether we consider ourselves to be member focused first or industry focused first or what have you, I think if there's value and meaning to what's actually going on, people want to be involved in that, and that creates a community in and of itself.
Okay, that's it. It's really interesting. I'd love to be part of that. I might even sign up just to be part of that thing, because it is
You could do that.
I'm going to as soon as we finish this call, because it's a very lonely existence here. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I haven't got the time, or indeed I don't see the appetite from other ski school directors in Switzerland, but I'd love to start like an independent ski schools like association or something, just to meet up in a room once a year and just chuck ideas around. I'd love to do that, because sometimes it just feels like you just kind of, you can go for coffee or something with someone and chat stuff over, but that happens rarely, and it would be nice to have someone to exchange ideas with, from certainly from that perspective, because sometimes it feels like I'm ploughing like a field on my own, with like just me and a horse.
Well, I mean, you've got a good you've already started a good platform to kind of be an instigator of.
Well, yeah, that's true. Right? Yeah, that's true. I'll wait for the emails to flood in after this one and see if anyone's interested in my idea.
Be a pioneer, Dave.
It's about having the time to do these things. Tell me, it's I appreciate you kind of clearing that up, and it's and the openness to it. I think that's really, really cool. Are you at liberty to talk about the method? I notice it's kind of not quite been released yet, from what I can see. But what Can we talk about that, or are we not there yet?
We can talk about it.
I think we are to.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
To some degree, yeah. Like, I mean, we've sort of alluded to it a little bit through some of this conversation, but the where it kind of all comes together, and this is, it's not that I'm not at liberty to talk about it, but one of the important parts of moving that forward is that engagement with the building ski industry steering committee. Mm-hmm. So that's a piece that, as we talk through this, it's a collection of ideas at the moment that we want their input on. But really, our method combines, the science of skiing, the science of teaching, and that all sort of culminates into what we are sort of now in our own community here referring to as the adventure. And that is, really simply put, it's fun, safe learning. And there's a lot of depth to those three, simple buckets. But that's really what's driving us. And, Perry mentioned things like, some of the tools that we're going to put out there and make available to people. It's really all going to be driven from I'll use a Mark Sedgwickism, a first principles approach where we want to be as science-based as we possibly can, but make that applicable to what's needed at the time. So is it always all about teaching people about physics? No, it's just simply about teaching them how to point the ski over there so that they can get to where they want to go. But that all has a science. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why that works. Relationships between center of mass and base of support, and what the ski does on the snow, and things like that. So, our method is really going to be based on the realities of the situation and what's needed at the time. We're not yet at a place where we've sort of. Everybody has their kind of their teaching approach and their skiing approach in a way. And we haven't really, I'll say, coined any of those phrases yet. I mean, some of them we have, but we want to make what we do memorable for people, particularly the new ski instructor that's just getting involved, and they do need something that kind of galvanizes the priorities when you're out there teaching. But we're giving ourselves a bit of time on that, and not trying to just come up with a graphic or an icon that describes everything. We talk, and I'll get a little bit off topic here, but we are talking a lot about the reality that we do have an opportunity to do a bunch of things for the very first time with this organization, and so we're treating that with a lot of importance and not trying to plant our flag, if I can say that, on one particular idea. Yeah. We're trying to stay as open in our development of what we're doing as we're going to want our membership to be open in their view of the world, not to overstate it, but not getting too singularly focused on this is how we do it. Yeah. More an approach of these are when you get more experience and when you learn lots of stuff, you can see it from the perspective of what can I do and how can I make this work? Because again, it all comes back to that mountain experience for the learner. So kind of went all over the place there, but that's really what's driving our method is the best ways to get the reality of what can be and what needs to be done out there as we go.
And maybe if I can just quickly add, Dave, to Jeff's point too, it's not, by no means is anything that we're doing secretive. We're one of the places that we're at is, as Jeff mentioned, we believe it's the right approach, so we are science-based, but that doesn't necessarily mean, there is also what we present to the community, right? Like, which is, does it resonate and so on, which is not, because not the worst thing, but we're not arming a ski instructor to then go to the market and recite some textbook. That's not the point. So to make it, digestible and resonate, we're kind of in that phase. And then the other side of it too, that is we'll never be done. Like our approach to the method, it's not like, okay, we've done it, we put a bow on it, and now we go to market. We again, back to that zero ceiling concept, we apply that to ourselves as well. We think we can keep improving on, and again, we're not going to change physics, but we can keep improving on how how it, on our delivery, how it resonates, how it impacts the ski instructor, how it impacts their clients, their guests, their students. We view that as a never-ending thing, and we're as we build out our team. I'll say this: we're excited by the people that we have working with us, because we've got people that are expert storytellers, if you will. One of our partners is in the film business, so he can bring some stuff to life. And then we've got a PhD on staff, which makes sure that we're not doing anything actually that isn't right, isn't like scientifically based and so on. So we're just and we'll release it in stages. So I'll make a bit of a marketing pitch. Our website is psic.pro. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, because we'll keep releasing stuff as it becomes ready. We've been on a fairly short time crunch, but yeah, I think people are going to be excited with how much we've actually accomplished when we, by the time we hit snow this winter. So that's kind of where we're at. Jeff kind of touched on the nuts and bolts of what the method is, but we're not holding anything secret. And maybe if I can just add this, because you kind of touched on it as well, Dave, is our approach to this is, our vision is that we're going to bring value to the market. We want people to try us, get involved. Hopefully they enjoy it, they get value out of it. But we're not in any way creating an exclusive club. So whether you're from another organization in Canada, another organization, you mentioned, hey, you want to be a member. We want everyone to take part of it, and and on the other side of it, we would recommend to anybody that we come in contact with to do the same. We don't think we're going to have all the answers in the world. So if you come from any other organization in the world and have done some of your training there, and you get some value out of our training or our online resources, great. But it doesn't. This is not an exclusive thing. We believe that the more knowledge that's out there, the better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This so. Just get my thoughts in order here. So at the moment, as it stands, what we're saying is kind of we're sort of working on it, but it's coming. I know you're under pressure before the start of this season. I understand that. I know exactly how that feels looking at my to-do list here. But it sounds to me more like it's going to be. You actually have a really, really good opportunity if I'm reading this right, to come up with something that is completely different. Every other system has this sort of hierarchical, pyramid or greasy pole that you've got to climb to get to the top, to be one of the end bosses, and then everyone's got to get past you to get through to the thing. You do actually have a really good opportunity to create something a little bit more holistic here.
Well, what's super cool about, completely, Dave. And what's super cool about that, and I think this is we have to challenge. When I say our own, I'm talking about our management group, our own thinking, because the reality is, when a lot of times in life you go, well, I can't do that because of some pre-programmed in the background thinks or knowledge or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's all we are, and I say this with pride. Even when we came to develop our logo, we put on there, consciously established in 2023, because we're literally starting from here. There is, and we have an opportunity to go, well, the global did we do that in the past because it made sense, and maybe it was the right thing and it fit in, but well, let's take a good hard look at it. Well, maybe we don't have to do that. And what does that look like and so on? Because here's the other thing is, I don't think we know where our next leaders come from. They may come from segments that we haven't seen. They may come from people that we haven't seen, and let's make sure that we don't signal out those people. If I can tell one quick story, I had a light bulb moment a couple of years ago. I was in the NSIA, the industry committee of retailers in the U.S. They did something really cool. Or I got a particular member of a ski resort was talking about recruiting, and they were talking about recruiting hotel general managers. And the point is they said, well, their culture was, well, to get the best hotel general managers, we're going to go to Cornell University because they got the best hospitality program. Mm-hmm. But what that actually led to was the exact same person every time. Does that make sense? So if you make, it wasn't premeditated, but by making this decision, you get this outcome, as opposed to, well, and when you look at it from a diversity point of view, that immediately ruled out people from other backgrounds and whatever. And I think that's an important lesson for us that we're embracing is, what does that look like? When let's be open for all, because we don't know where that person's going to come from. And I think that's important. I think it's important to give the opportunity for everybody to get inspired. They need to know that the only thing that's going to hamper their development, their progression through life is actually their own ability, right? Like when I say their own ability, like their work ethic and so on, it's not that there isn't some predetermined fence that prevents them from going to here and so on. And we are really excited about that.
I think if I can jump on that for a second. One of the things, just real quick, Dave, when we all first started to get together, and I mean, we actually haven't been physically in the same room all together yet as a leadership group. We've obviously spent lots of our time on Zoom and phone calls and stuff. But as we started talking about, well, what is our structure? Like, how do we look as an organization? You might notice this if you've been on our website. You'll see that even in our titles, we've tried to. I guess it's consciously, but it feels a little bit subliminal as well. My title, for example, in the organization is empowerment and development. Perry is industry and innovation, and it's not we're trying to create even a world for ourselves where it's not director of or manager of. It's we're trying to be as forward looking as we can, because we were at this part of earlier in the conversation we talked about this, which is the future of the ski industry is for us to help develop and to allow them to be on scene and to change the industry in ways that we probably can't even conceive it might be able to change. Like those ideas, those secrets, if I can say, are out there still to be discovered, which is kind of a cool thing. So I think we're trying to look at everything in that light, which is, how do we act as a leadership group, and how do we develop this thing moving forward? Therefore, what is the example that we can set for the people that will be our licensed professional trainers out there in the world delivering our products? So that at every step, we're looking at it through the lens of what is the opportunity here to create something moving forward. And that something might be an individual and their skill set. That something might be broader, more industry based. It might be a specific product, but it's like, for me, that's exciting to be a part of, is something where it's, it's always forward looking as best we can. And like you said, we've got an opportunity to do a lot of things for the very first time. So we're not taking that lightly. It's a fun, creative space to be in.
How do you? If I can also add too, like we want to, we want to embrace where we're at, which is the startup out of the gate and so on, and that wherever possible, that we don't create barriers that have a downstream effect. Like we just and as an example, although I think there's been inroads in the ski industry overall, but things like how are we skewing? Are there enough female perspectives in management, in leadership, and so on? And we've got work to do. And when I say that regard, overall, globally, but then on the other side of it too is to our specific organization is, are we doing the right things that again that just out of some cultural nuance have a downstream effect that's going to be negative towards our eventual potential and so on. So we're embracing where we're at quite carefully, to Jeff's point, quite carefully, and how that looks and how it works. Do we skew, whether it be gender based, do we skew right in terms of age? Do we have enough young people? One of the things that my experience has taught me over the last few years is if we provide opportunity and there is a perspective of what the possibilities are, then you inspire young people, right? But if young people think, there's no opportunity, the hierarchy, I will never break through some of those ceilings from the hierarchy point of view, then they disengage. They completely disengaged.
Yeah, it's there's a couple of things that I think have jumped out for me from that. So I managed to get tagged in a debate on Facebook about something. Basically, moved a course somewhere, and I don't know. I ended up being in it somehow, and you can see that approach in some of the resentment that the nature of hierarchies and to a certain extent human behavior to organize themselves into hierarchies. You can't deny that because it's a human trait. You can't deny it, not personally, obviously, within what you see. It's people see, rightly or wrongly, but I think rightly in most ski instructor certificate giving out organizations, is that you have a bunch of instructors kind of kicking around at the entry level at the bottom, and then it sort of forms itself into a pyramid or a greasy pole or whatever you want to describe it at. And eventually, if you manage to get through all of the levels, you end up at the top, and then you're one of the people that decides whether the people at the bottom can come through and compete against you. Essentially, that's almost the model. That's certainly a European model. How do you ensure then, because I really like your ideas, this kind of flat structure and this kind of openness. I like what you're saying. I like what I'm hearing. How do you ensure that as you reach a certain critical mass of members and stuff, that people don't use it? You see this often, right, in organizations. They take the organization and they sort of, in a quest for power over anything. You see it in politics, you see it in corporates, you see it in all sorts of organizations, you see it everywhere. How are you going to ensure that this kind of feeling of openness and this new way that you want to do things remains within the organization, and it's robust enough to weed out those people who come into organizations seeking power? Because that does happen.
That's a really good question.
It's a great question.
Jeff's gonna, because he might smile because he's heard me say this before. Because I think more is more, and what we have the opportunity to do in this world. I'm gonna go back to some of my Worcester Blackcomb days. When I say but like the management team in that organization when I was involved, it grew the ski school pro by pro by pro. And my point is Dave, like if you and I were in a ski school, I'm sure, you would have clientele. You would have clientele that you've got a great rapport with that are uniquely tied to you because of your attributes and your perspective and your help. That would in no way be competitive to me as a ski pro in that ski school. Mm-hmm. I think I would have my rapport and my people that resonate with, that resonate with that relationship. And I think that's the opportunity. So that's a micro example, but that's the opportunity that's in front of us. Is it's not like in the world, like whether it be a ski pro or a client, I bet you I have my clients that would like me, and I bet you have your clients that like you, and those two may never cross. Mm-hmm. So the cool thing is I don't think we're in a hierarchical model here. I think, like there will be people that resonate, that resonate with a group of people and so on. And, back to our conversation with some of the softer skills, like some of the value and the relationships that form they're going to be unique to that pro and that client, or that pro and those clients, like, if you will. And we know, like in our ski industry, for people that are listening to this podcast, how often would you be on a chairlift? And it's a cool environment because you're probably not talking about skiing on the chairlift, right? But you're talking about family issues or business issues or how are your kids doing or all these different things. Like in this day and age, it's an unbelievably cool environment that we have, right? Because we're not, we're typically not on our phones when we're out skiing. We've got some real cool quality time, and I think the bond that's formed between the value of a great instructor and user, that is endless. And I think we're going to embrace that until the end. And as long as, I'll say it because back to the zero ceiling thing, I don't think we have, there is no gap. And in my experience, every time in life, like I like being part of something bigger. I'm going to go back to Interski for a second. Being part of the world of it was way better. It was way better emotionally and satisfying than showing what we were doing as Canada. Like it was so cool to be a part of the greater thing. And I think that's our opportunity. And that's, we're embracing that as a startup is what's the bigger play here? And the bigger play is everybody being connected. So it's a bit of a red, but we're in such a cool place in that regard.
Well, I think too that like it's a conscious decision, right? To decide to harness the probability of success versus evaluate your assumption on potential or things like that. And I think Dave, that's kind of what I infer from your comment there is we do get into this mindset. I think in our industry, particularly you mentioned if you're part of a certification organization, that comes with some default positions, if I can put it that way, which is part of your job likely is that you're actually certifying people, which means you're evaluating their knowledge and their skills and things like that. And we do end up looking at people in that or from that lens, right? Is okay. Well, I've got a thing to evaluate them against, and I like my honest answer to how do you create that open environment and not sort of default into a hierarchical world. I'm actually not 100% sure is my answer. Because time will tell. But what our goal is to really search out. What is how do we help people reach their potential, even if you're not actually sure what their potential is? Because I don't think you are. Until they're there, you're just not, that's not something that's definable. But yeah, like just conscious decisions to, instead of telling someone, because I'll be honest, like one of the comments that happens out there, and this has come to us through, third party, participants in some of our products of the past, which is, the comment that gets out there in the world is, oh yeah, you've got a long way to go before you can get to, whatever, your level 3 or your level 4, or, oh yeah, no, if you're not, if you don't do this full time for the next X number of years, you're just not going to get there. And I think those are the conscious decisions we've got to make, is we've got to figure out how to encourage that person to keep moving forward, regardless of our impression of whether we think they're going to be successful on a certain timeline or what have you. That actually isn't the point at all. The point is, how do I encourage you, Dave, to be involved? Like even this conversation, we're getting excited now, right? We're starting to trust each other a little bit more, and I think we're talking about potential of where our actual industry can go, and that's what I would hope to do with everybody. And I think when we do that, we do by default change the landscape. We become a group of people who are constantly trying to pull from where we are and look for opportunities to get pulled forward by other people who are in a different place. And I think that's a culture that we really want to be focused on. Again, how we do that and how that plays out, that will involve conscious decisions on our part too, to make sure that we're really focused on making sure that we abide by our own code of ethics and that we focus on where we want to go, because it all has an impact. There's no question. Those little comments and you've got a choice every single time to encourage or not, and we've got to be in the encouraging department.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from. It's something in the nature of organization. I've seen it within my own ski school. Sometimes. Well, I started this with this beautiful idea that the management structure of the school is like completely flat, and I'm just one of the guys, and that's that. It hasn't ended up that way, because the busier you get, the more layers of the more you've got to. Someone's got to be the boss, right? Like it's just how it goes. I think one of the ways that you can get rid of those kind of people that are in it for the quest for power or control as such is to make it, which is also what I think they should do with politics, by the way, is to make it all voluntary. So if you want to be an MP in Canada, you don't get paid. So you do it for the love of it. Right? And that then makes sure that I think that you get the right, well, you've done half the job in getting the right people in to it. Now, when it's a commercial organisation, I accept it's quite a little bit different, but that's just one idea that's just come off the top of my head. But what I'm saying is that as an organisation grows, it naturally slows down a little bit, and it naturally has to put in place structures in order to manage something. I don't necessarily see any other way that it could happen. Say if you go from 200 members to 2,000 members, there's a certain extra bit, and signing up, 100 ski resorts on the other side, like it's going to end up having its own certain workload. That means that you can't manage it all yourself. Does that make sense?
But I think you bring up a good point. Like one, like we on the call, like Jeff and I, we're employees of the organization because there is, we do need to sustain ourselves, and there is real work involved.
Sure.
Maybe to your model, like our industry steering committee, and I don't in any way mean to speak for them, but what's really exciting is they are involved as volunteers based on the potential, based on what we can create together. And that's a real cool thing. There is no direct vested interest in their contribution. Like it's hey, what can we do together? And I'll say this is our to use that committee as a resource. The cool thing about that is we're definitely enlisting their insights, their perspectives, and so on. But I'll be upfront about it. They're not doing the work, and I put that in quotation marks. Like we're not giving them homework to build, because that's our job, and we want where their huge value comes from is in their perspective. Does this make sense? Does it not make sense? What are we missing? What are we not missing?
Yeah.
That big picture guidance where we then as a staff team want to because there is, in anything in life, there's work needed to take it from some philosophical concept to what does it actually mean? Where does the rubber hit the road?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I mean, we're no, like, I'll also say this, maybe philosophically, and maybe this fits in with, because, and again, I agree with your perspective and your experience as well. But I think the other side of it too is I don't think we as an organization will make decisions, and we'll make mistakes as well.
Everyone does.
Right? I think it's more important to make the decision and learn from it than get in a place where you just go, we're too afraid to move. We don't know what to move, and then you don't do anything.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the worst case scenario for progress, right? So we'll move, we'll do some things. Obviously we're going to do some things that are going to hit and go and be great, and some of the things you know what, we could have done that one better.
But it's how you learn, isn't it, Perry? I mean, it's not really. I don't think there's anything bad in that. I think one of the things is, like you say, it's making a decision, not doing nothing, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. It's something.
What's so cool is that's a process that we have to embrace as an organization. And here's the really cool thing: it's the process of what every instructor everywhere in the world has to embrace as well. Is often, it's something right down to the nuts and bolts of what we do. You're out with a client, you try something, it didn't resonate, maybe you stretched them too much in there, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And what you do as an instructor? You adapt, right? You pay attention to what was going on and what impact it had, and you adjust your approach. That is like the hallmark of a great instructor. It's not that they didn't make quote unquote a mistake or whatever, but they went, you know what, that worked, that didn't work, and they help guide the experience to get it at the end of the day, up to a positive experience. Yeah, and that's
I'm going to add one more thing to that too. Is we're actually very, very lucky, and I think the group of us are quite inspired as well by the fact that that's also the response or the atmosphere that we're involved with a lot of snow ski areas at the moment as well. Is they are also asking that same question: is what's possible here, and where could this go? And they're interested in trying it because I think and I don't mean to speak on their behalf entirely, but the sense that I get in the close conversations I've had with a few different ski areas and snow school directors is they're starting to look at it as they may not know all the answers either, but they're interested in finding out, right? They're interested in working with us to go, that's actually, you've got my attention, right? You've got my attention, and I'm interested to know where this goes, and I want to be a part of it. And so we're also benefiting from that same thing that we're describing we want to try to create. And it is a continuum. I think, I don't know, but like I say, we could probably talk about it for a long time, but the reality is that at every main connection, if the concept of forward momentum and potential and what's out there as new ideas, if that's in the forefront, I think there's a lot of success available there.
Okay.
It's great. It's fun.
Well, I think that is a good note to kind of pause this conversation. What I think I'd like to do is once you guys once you're sort of, I get the feeling we're just a little bit, I wouldn't say too early, but I'd love to have a part 2 of this, maybe after this winter.
Yeah.
And come back and revisit and see how it's ended up after winter 1, and kind of get an update and see where we are, and talk through more, in more detail from a technical, maybe a teaching perspective, where we are, and kind of fill out the bones on the framework that we've discussed today. That would be really, I'd love to do that if you've got time to do it, once winter's come and gone.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, dude.
Yeah,
be very
totally in.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, look, if people would like to find out more about Professional Ski Instructors of Canada, where would they go?
Website
PSIC.pro.
Yeah.
PSIC.pro, and you're on Facebook and Instagram, if I remember rightly.
Correct.
All right, cool. I will add those links into the notes for the podcast as well. So, gents, thank you so much for joining me. I've noticed, I really want to get in touch with you and find out more, and we've certainly had an amazing conversation. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Real pleasure.
All right. See you soon.